And I spent a lot of the first 4 years that I was in India in retreat, and that was what my monastic teacher primarily did. I'd see him, I'd spend a couple months with him, he'd say, okay, go to the mountains and do this and this and this. And I spent about half of that time alone, in silence a lot of times, spending a lot of time working on interior stuff. And then in 1974, I met him in '69. In 1974, I began traveling with him. And we started traveling, and for the next several years, we just traveled. And a couple days here, a couple days there. He was itinerant. Well, he still is. In 1976, some people that had met him, a few Westerners that had met him in our travels, and some Indians had also invited him to come to America. And so he brought me along as his interpreter and translator. And we had an occasion to spend a few weeks with my parents. And my parents were physically and financially in not very good shape. And so we went back to India. And then we came back the following year again. And we did a 4-month tour of this country. And we spent time again with my parents. And that time on the plane going back home, he said to me, you have to return to take care of your parents. You cannot live the life of happiness and joy that you live in America while your parents are suffering. It's your job, it's your calling. You gotta go back and take care of them. And so I came back, and I stayed about 5 months or 6 months, and I went back. I said, I can't take the West. It's very difficult to live in the West. It was very easy living there, actually. And he said, no, sorry, go back. He says, get married. He says, that'll be an attachment for you. He says, get married, and then it'll be hard for you to come back. Then you'll have to stay there. And I did. Interesting, though. He said, but marry a flight attendant. So that you can come back and forth to India frequently. He knew enough about that to know that flight attendants had. So I came back, and I came to Hawaii, and I was asked to teach yoga at a place. And so as a way of kind of grounding myself here, I started teaching yoga class. My first day in class, out of 20 students, there were 9 flight attendants. Because there were bases of several flight attendants here in Hawaii, and so they would do yoga because they had to stay in shape. This is pre-aerobics classes and all this stuff. We're talking 1977. And I looked at that and I went, what do you say? As the Muslims would say, inshallah. So, I didn't marry any of them. But the woman that I did marry became a flight attendant a few months after we got married, actually. And so I have been back to India about 15 times since then. And I have continued to stay connected there and saw academia as a vehicle to be able to maintain that connection and also to be able to continue my practices and my education along the lines of what seemed to be important to me.